Today's video is a little bit different. It is on creepy places and happenings in New York State. The Lady of the Lake, Ronkonkoma. Ronkonkoma is Long Island's largest freshwater lake, and story has it that an Indian princess fell in love with a white settler. Her father had forbid her to see him, so each night, for years, she would paddle out to the center of the lake and send out a message to him. After years of this, she had paddled out and finally committed suicide, and her boat eventually came over to him with her dead body in it. He then was so distraught that he also killed himself. Story has it that many people get an insatiable urge to go out to the middle of the lake. It is said that men have been pulled under and drowned in this area. Today, many people have claimed that they have witnessed the urge to go out into the lake, but they fought the desire. Still, every year, men have drowned there, with their bodies showing up weeks later in various locations. I wouldn't really suggest walking along those shores. Gravity spots, also known as mystery spots in New York. In New York State, as within many other places around the globe, there is a mystery spot that does defy gravity. In Middlesex, New York, there's a place called Spook Hill. It is on Newell Road in Gates County. It's within the Finger Lakes region. They claim that if you put your car in neutral, you will roll uphill. Some say that it has to do with an Indian burial ground that's not that far away, but most would say that it has to do with gravity. So if you're out there sometime and you want to stop to Newell Road, check into that. It sounds pretty interesting. There's a different type of mystery spot in Lake George, New York. Next to the Visitors Center, a circle has been carved into the ground, and a map of the lake is painted over it. It is said that if you stand in the center of the circle, your voice is actually amplified around you. If you were to scream, you will hear the echo of your own voice. Yet people standing a few feet away won't notice anything, nor will you. Or if you stand outside of the circle, you'll only hear your typical voice talking. Pretty interesting, huh? Now this brings me to the Whispering Walls in Grand Central Station. If you go down to the lower concourse there, underneath that archway, and you stand and you face the wall, you can have your friend stand about 35 feet away facing in the opposite direction at the wall. And you can talk normally into the wall, and they can hear you as clearly as if you were standing next to them. People have shown this also on TV where they've actually whispered into the wall and the other people could hear them. 35 feet away. Pretty interesting, huh? This next one's pretty interesting. It's about the mole people that live under Manhattan. Most of us see like high-rise buildings with penthouses on top, but something lurks below these glorious buildings, as some would actually say. It is said that below the city there are societies of human-like creatures that actually live there. This bizarre, strange race is said to be that of the mole people. They claim they have lived there their entire lives underground, never seeing the daylight. It is said that without years of sunlight it has affected their physical appearance, so they looked like bug-eyed monsters. It is said that they hate the human surface race, and that they will actually eat surface dwellers. Ew. Especially those that came into their domain. However, an author said that after years of work below the city, she only saw groups of homeless people. For more information on the mole people, you could get Jennifer Toth's book right here in this picture, The Mole People, Life in the Tunnels Beneath New York City. Okay, this next one is one that I always did years of research on. I haven't done it in the most recent years. But this is something that happened down on Montauk, which is actually the tip of Long Island. And if you take Route 27 all the way down to the end, you'll come to what is known as Fort Hero, Camp Hero. It's had different names. It is like a so-called abandoned Air Force station from World War II. Now, back in the day, 70s, 80s, maybe even back a little bit further, they claimed that there was experiments that had gone on, governmental experiments, with younger boys, like in their teens, and they would put them in what was called the Montauk chair. Now, the Montauk chair supposedly would bring, well, how would I word this nicely? Would bring the boys to a certain high, and it would give them like sort of psychic effects. They also claim that LSD was used on these boys. Many of them were brainwashed and so on. A lot of these boys were like young boys that were runaways, things like that. Many of them supposedly came up missing. How true these stories are, I don't know, but I do believe that there might be something to it, but maybe not exactly as it's been told. There was buildings and stuff all along the grounds, different buildings obviously, because it was kind of like an Air Force base. And they still claim that there are electrical wires leading under the ground that are like new wires that supposedly go to this base, and people that have gone in there have been escorted out. For a place that's closed down, it does make one really wonder. They claim that the underground base had tunnels that went to Brookhaven Labs, and that the labs had something to do with it. I don't really know, but it is quite interesting, and if you ever get the chance to look it up, go on the web and look up the details of Montauk and experiments. All you gotta do is type in Montauk experiment and something will come up. Tons of stuff will come up. They say that there's more of this going on even to this day right here locally, a little over a half an hour from here, at what is known as the old Griffiths Air Force Base. And they claim that that is also going on in there somewhere with, the young boys. Might be girls by now. I don't know. It is pretty interesting. Yeah, I would say so. And they also claim that there's like a smaller facility beneath the city of Rochester, too, where this stuff goes on. One never knows. I can't say that this is true or not true, and I don't want to get in trouble for saying that it is true. But it is an interesting story. And along with the Griffiths Air Force Base thing, that also supposedly has underground tunnels that go from there over to New York Mills, up into like the Remsen area. Who knows? But there's a lot of people that have claimed to have been products of these strange, experiments, I guess one would say. But it is very interesting indeed. The Cardiff Giant. Around 1867 to 1868, atheist George Hall was arguing with a fundamentalist minister. Remembering the story in Genesis about giants in the earth, he wondered if other religious folks would be convinced that an actual stone giant might be petrified remains of one. So in secret, he modeled to have a statue made of himself that was over 10 feet long. When done, it was covered in a sulfuric acid and pounded with darning needles to give it an old look. It was buried on a friend's farm in Cardiff, New York. In 1869, workers were hired to dig a well and dug the giant up. The majority found it to be a fraud instantly, while, as Hall had expected, the Christian fundamentalists believed the remains were of an actual giant. Hall acquired $30,000, charging people 50 cents to view it. It was so successful that P.T. Barnum wanted it, but when he couldn't get it, he had his own giant sculpted. It wasn't until both giants were together in New York City that they were both found to be a fraud. The Cardiff Giant ended up in a private home in Des Moines, Iowa, and later sold to the New York Historical Association and now resides at the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown. I had taken this actual picture of it in Cooperstown last summer in 2015. I thought it was pretty neat that they had that there. This next one comes from actually the area where my family grew up, and this is from Bridgewater, New York. And story has it, I won't mention the people's names, but let's just say a well-known family out there were quite avid hunters, and we all know that your country boys aren't just afraid of small squirrels jumping from trees. I mean, they're hunters, they're used to being out in the wilderness, and this is out in the backwoods a little bit, and apparently one of the younger boys back in, I think it was the late 70s, early 80s, somewhere around there, was out hunting, and he came back screaming and crying like a little girl in church. Supposedly, he went up the hill, and while he was off in the hunting areas and stuff, he came across what you see here in this photo, what we all know is Bigfoot. Apparently, things had gotten thrown at him. He turned around and came running down the hill, crying and crying, until he ran right into his front door of his house. Are there Bigfoot in Bridgewater up in those hills that everybody snowmobiles on and hunts in? Who knows? But I will be back with a lot more stories of strange things that have happened and still continue to happen in New York State. Thanks so much for watching. Go down below, give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs down, whatever you want to do. Feel free to subscribe. I'd like to hear your comments on things, and I will be doing more of these videos soon. Thanks for watching, guys.